G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing Thomas Jeffs from Lucidica, based in London, United Kingdom. Thanks for your time today, Tom.
Thanks for having me, Troy.
Let's start with how we know each other. Do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, so going back a few years, Troy was an investor and early business partner in Lucidica. So he helped us grow from a certain size to a slightly bigger size before heading back to Australia and Tasmania to do his stuff there. But that was 10 years ago.
I think was it 2007 or 2000? I think it was 2007, maybe it was 06. I can't remember. At least 14 years ago.
Good
and
times,
a good mutual, was that?
Good times.
They were good times. Yeah, my liver just survived 3 and a bit years in London, the old Heathrow injection. My God. But yeah, mutual friend of ours, Richard, good friend of both yours and mine, introduced us because I think Richard was working in the building, the university building where the business is still housed now, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed, it was, yeah. And so introduce us.
Well, tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
Yeah, so we're the IT team for your business. We do everything technological for small businesses, predominantly based in London in the UK, but we do have a few clients all over the world, even as far as Australia. But we do everything technological. So our core bread and butter is still system support, so making sure your laptops, desktops, servers all function okay. But then we also do hosting, so a Microsoft Gold partner. We do hosting of Office 365, Microsoft 365. We're a Google partner, so we do G Suite. And then we also do business systems based within SharePoint. So CRMs, ERPs, basically enabling you to get the most out of your Office 365 environment.
Yep, great. So for businesses that aren't big enough to have their own dedicated IT person, I guess you guys are a one-stop shop for the first port of call for technology advice.
Yeah, and we've also carved out a bit of a niche in terms of supporting small branch offices of larger companies. So company might have a few hundred members of staff in, say, Israel, and then they've got a branch office of, say, 10 people in the UK. And we support their sort of UK side of things, and sometimes sell them their licenses to the main office.
Great. And tell the audience how you started out.
I fell into it really. So I was at university, ran out of money, started working in an internet cafe. Shows how long ago it was. Certainly in London. People started coming into the internet cafe and asking if we could do IT support, and the owner of the internet cafe said yes, helped me send an invoice, and I sort of built up from there. And I mean, it does combine my two main passions, which is small business and technology. So whether falling into it is the right term, it's the path that I was destined to find it some way. Just I sort of stumbled through it rather than had a clear vision.
Well, it was in the blood, wasn't it? Because your parents was the largest vegetarian restaurant in the UK, in Rugby.
Yeah, they did for 30 odd years, maybe longer. So they certainly, I mean, one thing they taught me is hospitality is a very, very tough game. And I certainly don't envy the hours they put in. Not that I didn't put in long hours in terms of growing the business as well, but hospitality is tough, and so they certainly gave me a decent work ethic for working hard and pushing yourself.
And you graduated from the internet cafe and then ended up in London Metropolitan Uni campus?
Yeah, so one of their business innovation centre. So there weren't any students there. It's small businesses that they supported. Back in the day they were actually hosting websites from Shoreditch. If you know Shoreditch, you know how crazy that is these days. Yeah, it was it was their business support arm for the university, and we were based in there, and we started supporting the businesses that were based in there in their sort of innovation programs. It sort of predates, it's now an accelerator program or an incubation program, but it predated accelerator programs, so the start of boot camps and so forth. It's called Accelerator London, but as I say, it was named Accelerator before the term accelerator program came along, and so you've got these businesses based in there, some a little bit more fledgling and some more mature, and they provide business support, and we're part of that business support.
Yep. And so then Justin joined you in the business?
Yeah, so my first business partner, actually met him in the building, sorry. And he was mainly technical, and we formed more of it was a consultancy then rather than a full support desk. And we had, I think when Troy came over, we had 1 member of staff or 1.5. And then Troy invested into the business, and at that point we sort of changed from a consultancy to a full help desk function. So we hired a couple of engineers, doubled our prices.
I remember that discussion.
Yeah, doubled our prices, didn't lose a single customer. The only had this lovely Scandinavian company, and the only problem that we had about doubling our prices was we also decreased our payment terms from 30 days to 15. And the only complaint we had was Justin, our first business partner, had to sit through a presentation from Magnus, the owner of the Scandinavian business, on how Scandinavian companies pay their invoices much better than UK companies. And he was upset that we were reducing his payment terms from 30 days to 15. Wasn't massively upset about doubling the pricing. No. He was massively upset that. So we obviously let him have his 30 days, and they were always great payers. And you know, I think that's the best thing about that contracting the payment terms is a lot of clients don't care because they don't adhere to payment terms, but it does allow you to sort of focus that a little bit and say, okay, well, the ones that really do care, then you can pull them out really better and treat them differently. And whereas the ones who need a bit more attention, then it allows you to put up different processes to chase them and to control their debt. So I mean, that was an interesting lesson as well, really. So both the doubling pricing and the payment terms really taught us quite a lot.
Only because that was a lesson I went through about 5 years earlier when our accountant over here was saying, you're not fucking charging enough. Oh, we're going to lose clients. And so same thing, we went through 2 or 3 iterations of price rises and didn't lose any clients. The ones we did lose, as he predicted, were the ones we wanted to lose, who were late payers and noisy and, you know, not very nice people. And yeah, I think it was about a year in, I think Justin left the business, and then we started piling on the juniors. But you know, for Justin's still in IT now. He's a great technician, but you know, for us to grow the business, one important thing in a service-based business, obviously, is filling out a timesheet, and that wasn't a strength of his. So he moved to a different area of IT, and where you don't have to fill out a timesheet. So
yeah, I mean, I think as well, Justin, I think the thing with small business and startups is you've got to enjoy the journey, and I think Justin really liked the idea of the destination and what it was going to be like when we got there, but you're never really there.
I think you love the journey. Could Sydney travel 3 hours, 6 hours a day from Oxford? Oxford and back. Oxford to Shoreditch is like 4 or 6 hours on a bus. Unbelievable.
That grated on him as well, was the travel. But I mean, I always remember him saying that he wants to be something that where the business wasn't, and it's continual. So it's all of it's a journey. I don't know. You do get some people who have this very succinct idea, and they start a business, they get to a certain point, and they sell. But I think most businesses change along the way, and most have different directions. They meet new people, they have new opportunities, avenues close, doors open, all the way around. I mean, especially in today's world. I mean, in COVID, any business that was the same before COVID and still now, unless you're a manufacturer of PPE or then your business has probably changed at least once.
And what age were you when you first jumped into business? I guess with the internet cafe days, or your own business, would you say?
Yeah, so 1999 is when I sent out my first invoice.
Yeah.
So 20.
Sounds like a Prince song.
1999 is when I sent out my first invoice.
Yeah. No. There is a Prince song, something about dance like it's 1999 or something. Yeah. Do you have some key numbers to illustrate the growth over the now 22 years? Yeah, we started in business the same year. I was late 99 as well.
Nice. Yeah. So, I mean, I'd say in the current form, I take Lucidica, I think about 2009. So when you started, so before that, we were we were a consultancy rather than a small business hiring staff. So,
yeah, it was just you and Justin, wasn't it, when I turned up?
Yeah, I think we had one person or 1.5.
No, I think because Sylvie was the first hire, wasn't she?
No, we had Anita.
Oh, sorry, Anita. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Anyway, so from then we had 3 members of staff, including the owners, and now we have a Ukraine office as well, and so there's I think 22 equivalent full-time in the UK and 28 equivalent full-time in Ukraine.
Yep, 50 all up. That's great.
Now that's across 2 businesses. So we have an offshoring element now as well, where we provide high quality talent to other companies, predominantly customers of Lucidica, because there's a bit of overflow. But there's coders and even finance staff based in Ukraine, providing support to Lucidica and a couple of other clients.
Yep, great. And what number did we get to? I left early 2011, so a bit over 10 years ago now, 10 and a half years ago. It was around 15 or 20?
Yeah, so we also had Responsible IT, which was an interesting venture, which had a fair number of staff in it. And so that was an apprentice company. So we had this idea that we'd take young people, train them up in IT, and then take the best into Lucidica. And we've still got the base of the idea within Lucidica, and we still do it as much as we can, but it was probably a bit of a bridge too far, especially it was just around the 2008 financial collapse.
Yeah, just
which hit us oddly almost a year to the day later. We thought maybe it won't hit us because we're small enough, we're in IT and we're agile, but it did hit us. I think there were maybe 5 or 6 members of staff in Responsible IT.
When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
Have you succeeded? I don't know. I mean, I think certainly having the freedom to work on the business rather than in the business, and that's was a sort of more of a gradual thing that happened, certainly with the guidance that Troy gave us, and that definitely is why you're in business, really. I mean, I do love the work, but if I loved it that much, we would have stayed as a consultancy. And there's no point in moving to the next step of building a full IT support company if you're just going to carry on working in it rather than on it. And so maybe our first strategy away day was when sort of realized that, okay, I have more influence on the business and where the business is going, rather than doing the day-to-day jobs and servicing the clients day-to-day. So, but then, you know, there's always another challenge, and there's always something else that I look forward to, and so it is a journey, and so yeah, slightly woolly answer.
Well, what about this? What does success look like to you?
I think definitely that. So the ability to work on the business rather than in it, and change and improvement, continual improvement. So, you know, when you've got something and you can look back and you've made a demonstrable difference to a process or making something better. I mean, a good example was starting the sister company Miko, which does the offshoring. And that came from just an idea of getting better value, good talent in Ukraine. And we went out there and set up an office there and recruited some engineers. But then clients started asking, okay, well, can you find us some staff? And we did that initially under the Lucidica brand, just because it was a few people. And then it sort of grew. And then when we launched the new brand and moved people over onto it, then you can see this big change, this accomplishment. Okay, well, we have clients who needed decent offshore talent, and we've just now provided it, and you can see a nice, complete a journey of a problem and then a solution.
Yep. Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
Definitely initially word of mouth, getting out there. There's nothing more powerful than the founder giving recommendations and giving advice and networking. Nothing more powerful. I mean, things like this is really great. I mean, as you get bigger, obviously winning the clients individually becomes more challenging because you need to win more of them. So doing lots of different things, and just having a decent feedback loop of what worked and what didn't, and metrics to say, okay, well, if I put in this many hours, what do I get out? Do I get leads? Do I get ideally business? And what's the value of the business? But often your activity's small enough that you can't measure it in economic output. You have to measure it in whether you got leads, whether you got even soft contact, and then just repeating it. So once you find something that works, repeat it, but also continually evaluate it, because the world changes, and what would work 6 months ago, 12 months ago might not work now. We did have a period where we used to go physically to offices with small gifts, so crates of beer, cakes, things like this, and just go into the office and drop off these gifts, and that worked really, really well. But then COVID came along and all the offices closed.
Yeah.
And so you've then got to think, okay, well, how do you market in a COVID world? And so it is about just trying lots and making sure you have a method of recording what works and what doesn't.
One good metric on that, on both word of mouth and retention, I guess, is the Net Promoter Score, which I know Lucidica uses. What's the number at the moment?
So for last year, we've not done this quarter yet, so our quarter's just ended. But last financial year, which ended at the end of May, was 63.
That's phenomenal. So for the audience, that question you may hear sometimes by a big company, even a small company, how likely are you to recommend us to a friend or a colleague between 0 and 10, not 1 and 10, 0 and 10? And it's not a percentage, but there's a way to work out. And anything above, any positive number over 25 is good. 50 is very hard to achieve. And 63 or above is exceptional. So well done.
Thanks. We've actually started doing it. We did do it ages ago internally for staff, and so we're doing a bit of. We've just started now, rolling out this quarter again. How likely are you to recommend Lucidica as a place to work for a friend or colleague? So we're starting doing that. We haven't got any scores yet for it, but I'm a big fan of it. It's universal as well, so it allows you to compare company to company and gives you a decent level metric, really.
While we're on marketing, should we have a quick chat about the Google gin bet we had, you and I? So that was what, I don't know, what year was that? 2009, I think. I made some smart ass offhanded comment to you once, probably at the pub, that I would bet you the best case or bottle of gin, because you love your gin, if you get us to page 1 of Google for the very difficult phrase IT support London. I think we were on page 72 at the time, and you took on that bet. I said I'll take a slab of craft beer if I win, and we end up speaking at the British Library about this after you achieved it in the 90 days. And as I said at the British Library, what I was really impressed with was the way you went about it. You just didn't try and do it all yourself. You read up on SEO, search engine optimization, back then, what was working, and then delegated, create all these fun projects for the rest of the team to create, which all fed into what I think you made it with 1 day or 2 days to spare.
It was about 2 days. It was brilliant. And you kept saying all the way through, I don't mind, mate. I win either way. Yeah, that's not really true. You win if we get there in 94 days.
Yeah, that's true. I'll win a little bit more then. Yeah, to have to buy a bottle of gin. Yeah.
I've still got that, still on the shelf.
Yeah.
And it's called Tom's Gin of Victory.
And what was Talkie the Toaster? That was Mel's project, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. So we came up with these. So we do. Obviously, we're a technology company and our product as engineers. So we spend a lot of time on development plans for engineers, and every single quarter, engineers have a bonus tied to their development plan, and they'll typically have 3 projects: 1 internal, 1 external, and an exam. And they have to accomplish these things. And back then, I sat down with each engineer and sat their personal development plan. And one of the engineers was quite interested in the early days of AI and these chatbots, and another engineer was quite interested in, back then, was the emergence of microcomputers. So before Raspberry Pis, but you could still get these tiny computers. And there was a new series of Red Dwarf coming out on TV, so you'll be able to date it then. And I came up with this idea of, why don't these 2 engineers work on a project together? Demel's a really smart engineer. She was going to write the software, and Sam was going to do the hardware, and they were going to create a version of Talkie Toaster, which is this character from Red Dwarf, where it makes you toast and it talks to you. It's quite an annoying character, but we put a computer inside it and wrote a chatbot, and we put it on our website. You could go to our website and have conversations with this toaster, and it would talk back to you in the style of Talkie Toaster from Red Dwarf. And we got loads of coverage. We got in The Guardian, Independent, got an Isaac Asimov site, Red Dwarf. One of the big tech sites wrote a blog article of the most humorous conversations they'd had with our toaster. And yeah, it was. We did a few other things, but that was the most successful in terms of combining. It's really good if you can combine solving a problem that you've got, or an ongoing thing in your business, like engineer development, with getting more value out of it, as in marketing. And so it worked. It worked really well. And Demelza and Sam loved it. His name's not Sam, but it doesn't matter. And it was one of the things that increased our SEO ranking, got us to page 1, was this Talkie toaster, which we actually redid recently, but it's not online at the moment. But if it goes online, maybe we can update the show notes.
Yeah.
But it was actually Demel's brother who did it. He's still around, and he did a version of Flappy Bird, but with a toaster.
Nice.
You can go and play Flappy Bird. And,
No, I love that. It was a big marketing moment for us, and as I said, the talk at the library, just the way you went about it was really, really smart. Leveraged the team, and they got something exciting to work on that was both an engineering development, as you said, and marketing, and really helped everyone. And how did you fund your business?
Largely through self-funding, so taking lower salaries. We didn't get any high street funding. I think we've still got overdraft. We don't really touch it. But Troy put some money in, but largely to supplement yours and my wages for the time rather than actual capital. Now definitely we use quite a few grants, so research and development is massive for us. I mean, I wouldn't say massive in terms of if we were a full software development company, but we'll easily claim 5, 10, 15 grand of capital gain of corporation tax relief each year from R&D. So I mean, and that's growing with our business platform business. So R&D is, every business should look at. If you're in technology at all, in the UK, the R&D grants are really generous. So as long as you're doing something new and innovative, then there's a few tests you've got to qualify for, but it's pretty liberal, and you claim I think it's 225% of your expenditure.
Yeah, similar to the one in Australia, although it's not as generous these days. I think they're really clamped down in the last few years.
Yeah, so let's say you spent 10 grand on an engineer or something, and it's proper R&D expenditure, then you don't just write off the 10 grand, you times that by 225%.
Yep. Yeah.
And then write off against your tax. So it works really well. And it does change behavior in a really good way, because it makes you, when you're looking at an engineer, certainly if they're a developer, then you want them working on the R&D, because then you times their cost by 225%. So the stuff that they can't really justify, that are things like bug fixes and stuff, then you try and stamp those out, and it's good. It's good for the economy. It's good for business. So I think R&D is a really innovative tax system, and I'm glad. I mean, it was an EU scheme, and like pretty much everything from the EU, the UK's on exit has just copied it, but they've said that they're going to keep it, and there's no sign that it's changing here. So
that's great.
Definitely R&D is a big one.
If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. I mean, definitely IT support is a challenging business, and I'd definitely go into technology. I'd probably go more into the software product side, so trying to create some kind of software product. Every time I meet business owners who have products, often they're like, "Oh, if only I was in the service industry," and then when I go, "Oh, if I was in the product industry."
Yeah.
So, but I think definitely looking at next steps, that some kind of product, because it's once you've got it right, it's easier to maintain than a software business, than a service business.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, people are hard.
Yes. Yeah.
Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
I think maybe shutting down responsible IT. That was tough. And just in the economic climate, we probably persevered with it for too long. And at one point we had it, they were very young, and it felt like we were running a school at one point. And although we weren't paying them much, it was just a constant distraction. And, it was never really earning the money it needed to justify the attention that it took. But sort of realizing that we'd taken on a bit too much at that point. I mean, especially as the world was collapsing around, it was a bit too much. So I'd probably say that was the most stressful. But I think beyond that, the fact that we do so much, so our technology expands everything from selling computers to hosting websites, means that we don't really have this. We've not really had a moment of, oh my God, since then. I've got a few friendly competitors, one who concentrates on IT support for retail sector. Mm-hmm. And COVID, it's been, I can't say it's been stress-free for us. It's been a challenge. But if we were doing IT support for till systems, I don't know how you'd survive. Mm-hmm. So I think I definitely there was the closing down responsible IT was probably, it's still there. It's just a subsection of Lucidica, and we still do IT support for charities, and we still take on apprentices, but we don't have these sort of half a dozen apprentices anymore.
What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
Certainly in the early days was letting go. And because they were my clients, I'd run every single one, and when something went wrong, then it was painful, and I wanted to continually fix it. And I always say now it's better that someone else makes the mistake and you learn from it than you never make the mistake in the first place and you're the one doing all the work, because you can never grow. And I've become better at that over the years. Now, I think still, I'd say now I've got a bit more of a problem in terms of not micromanaging enough, and certainly getting into the detail of some people's day-to-day, I find a challenge. And so I have to force myself that some people need a bit more support than, so maybe I've sort of swung in the opposite direction, but definitely letting go. And when Troy started, I used to pride myself on doing at least one all-nighter a month.
You're doing like 80-hour weeks. Easy.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So, and I loved it. Definitely a workaholic, and but the problem is you're sort of plugging up problems in the business, and you're not allowing the business to grow, and
there's no resilience either. If you're taken out with COVID again, like I think I said to you around that time, like if you get sick or hit by a bus, then you think about it this way, because I know your clients are very important to you, and I said you'll be letting your clients down because you can't be there. You'll be in hospital or in bed.
Yeah, it's so important. As a business, you've got to create a business that's repeatable without you. Otherwise, you haven't really got a business.
No, you just got yourself a job, a very long hour job. And what have you enjoyed the least about managing the fast growth?
When you get people wrong, it's painful.
Yeah.
Luckily, I've not had to fire many people, but I remember each one, and it's painful, and it's painful all the way up until you do it as well, because you're obviously firing them for a reason. They're either tearing down the team or they're not performing, and nobody enjoys it. And it's definitely making mistakes in terms of hires. Is I've enjoyed least.
What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
I think, as I mentioned before, so letting go, not trying to allow the business to grow and to make its mistakes and then fix those mistakes without your involvement. is probably the one.
And what is the number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
Yeah, there's quite a few. I'd say one that has helped me is logging and tracking my time. And I remember I was with Richard, our mutual friend, and Justin, and we were on Richard's company Strategy Away Day, and I said, from this, we all made commitments at the end, and I said, from this day forward, I'm going to track my time in 30-minute chunks. And I did, and from that day forward. And then when Troy came over, after I was the third person, he created a coding system that allows us to break down time into where it's going within the business. And so certainly being able to look back and it helps you in terms of when you don't feel you've got enough done in a month, you can have a look at where your time goes. And I just record it in my calendar, and you can look back and be like, oh, this is why I haven't got enough done in a month, because I had this problem and this problem, or my hours have been contracted because of this and this. And then you can say, okay, well, next month I'm going to make these changes, and you can plan, and you can say, okay, well, I'm going to do some extra hours, or I'm going to do some weekend work, or this has been a problem within the business, and so I'm going to look to fix that. And it was really good in the early days as well, when you're trying to decide what role to go for next, because we were all doing so many different things, and by analyzing your time and saying, okay, well, if we hire an admin person, this is going to free up this many hours. So yeah, I mean, I'd say that is probably up there as one of the top habits.
Yeah, reminds me of a Peter Drucker story. He worked with a lot of Fortune 500 companies. The 1940s, as Alfred P. Sloan from General Motors, and he worked with Henry Ford, etc. But he'd walk in there and ask the CEO, the head cheese, what are your top priorities in the business? And the CEO would reel off 20 or 50 things. And he said, no, the top priorities, whittle it down to finally get to 5 real priorities. And he'd say, all right, on my way out, I'm going to talk to your PA and ask them to track your time for 3 months, and I'll be back in 3 months. Oh, sorry, he'd ask before he left, so what percentage of your time are you spending on those 5 priorities you've just told me are the true priorities of where your time should be going? CEOs will go, of course, 80% of my time, that's where it's going. So got the PA to track the time, came back, and sure enough, it was Pareto reverse. So 20% of their time going on those 5 things they said were the most important use of their time. And even within a small business, I think it can help you get out of the weeds, and you say, right, next quarter, I need to invest more time in marketing. So you might be doing as many hours as you normally do, but if you don't structurally change where that time's going, and you're doing billable work, but you're transitioning, you can't afford a marketing person yet, so you need to spend some time on networking or marketing, copywriting, or whatever it is. But you're turn around to your timesheet the last quarter and you spent 5 hours on it, whereas you're really committed to 30 hours. That's when you can start to change your behavior for the next quarter.
Yeah, agree.
Be the change you want to see in your business. Become more productive and less stressed with our free Transform Your Performance online course. Once you see the benefits, put your entire team through the course at no cost. We start out by telling you the secret to guaranteed success, then over 100 lessons help you be more focused, present, productive, and feel more in control about work. growasmallbusiness.com.
Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
I think generally you've had more wins than mistakes. The interview process is really, really important. Manager tools is really good for a set of interview questions, behavioral questions. And if you're unsure in the interview process, don't hire them.
Yeah.
I'd like to say I've never made that mistake. And generally, if you're unsure for a reason, and it's much, much better to go back and advertise again. And interviewing is a real challenge for me, because I just know that you do like 10 interviews, and at the very best scenario, you're going to waste 9/10 of your time. And that frustrates me, but it's so important. Interviewing is pivotal here. And also, if the person isn't right, getting them out of the business. My business mentor always says that of all the people he's fired, his only regret is that he didn't fire them sooner. And you just know that person. I mean, the only thing I can say to that tenants it is often the person, I mean, we're really good at giving feedback. And so the person knows that they're on the cusp. And so there's quite a few times where the person has jumped just before they've been fired. And those are the best days, because not just from a personal thing, you don't have to fire them because, I mean, that's great, but just for the team, there's very few people who are hated across the team. I can think of one person in 20 years that we hired that everyone hated, but generally, I remember this one guy, in fact, Troy and I fired him, and
you're talking about Sam?
Bad decision, bad decision, but he blamed Troy. Anyway,
he gave me the desk there, didn't he?
He did, gave me the desk there, and he was like Marmite, certain clients, I had clients saying they can't work with him, refused to work with him. Anyway, the point of the story is that he was a hostile-ish hire. Anyway, when we fired him, I remember Sylvie, one of our great engineers back then, said that she felt that we'd fired her boyfriend and she was really unhappy about it. And so, you have to get, we were a small team then, 6 people, 7 people. And so it did make ripples. And even now, firing people does make these ripples. So if you can get someone to jump before firing them, that's probably the only example of where you should give it a little bit more time.
On the win side, though, the retention, how long's Jamal been there? 12 years now? It started just before I left.
Yeah, 12 years, said Jamal, 12 years.
Warren went wandering for a while and came back, and Sylvie as well.
Yeah, so we have a funny thing of, we have a lot of people going and coming back. A great engineer, Tom, is now in Australia. He left. Oh,
did he make it to Perth? I didn't think he got there.
Yeah, he's in Perth now. He went, and I think he left and came back about 3 times for various reasons. So, we have built a really good place, a good culture. It can be hard work, and a service desk is stressful, but by the fact that people keep coming back and stay with us for a long time means we're doing something right.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the next question. What are some things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
Well, I mean, foundation is openness. So talking about problems and being upfront and getting people to be part of the journey is the most important foundation. And then having a culture that's natural to you. So, for example, we have a very a well-stocked beer fridge and wine fridge. We do First Fridays, so that's something Troy brought in, where each month a different team member takes it in turn to organise a First Friday event that the company pays for. Been a bit more difficult during the pandemic, but it's important in terms of getting everyone to see each other. When we used to do it, we used to do hot desking, and we used to put people, we developed an app where it would put people next to each other, but also randomize it. So one of the problems that I always found in offices is you end up, certainly when we grew to a certain size, you end up with these little cliques of people always sitting together. So we deliberately broke that up and moved people around. And if people were having issues with one another, then we put them next to each other and sent them on what are called PAL lunches, peer assisted learning lunches. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that we spend in terms of a culture, just communication, getting people to talk, getting people to socialize together and express themselves.
Yeah, it's great. I especially love the First Friday events we did. I think you and I, Harley, organised any because the team kept growing. So it was, obviously 12 a year. But yeah, we did ice skating, art in the park, in Hyde Park, cricket, lawn bowls, archery. I remember paintballing under Waterloo Station, which
where you shot yourself in the neck.
I think I won. That was great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell the audience how you've handled balance.
Better now. Married, child, don't do all-nighters anymore. I still love the business and still find it difficult to switch off. But I think it goes back to what I said before in terms of working on the business, not in the business, and being able to let the business make its mistakes and grow rather than, stress about and fix everything. You can't fix everything and grow. It's just not possible.
Mm. And you're a general nerd. You love to learn and read. How much professional development have you invested in yourself over the years? Apart from,
well,
I guess obviously a lot from in the technical side of things, but I guess the other areas of professional development.
Yeah, well, I mean, the other thing that you probably forgot is at the same time I did the gin bet, we also had another bet that I couldn't get us to become a Microsoft Gold partner.
Well, that's right.
in the same 90 days.
Yep.
And in order to become a Microsoft Gold partner, we needed to have a Microsoft certified systems engineer. And I didn't have any Microsoft qualifications. And so while working in Lucidica and getting us to page 1 of Google, I also did 7 Microsoft MCPs.
90 days.
No, it was actually 34 days. Now, bear in mind, most people will do maybe, 2 MCPs a year while they're sort of, while they're learning, while they're working. You can do these intensive courses, but I didn't do one of those. I just did it.
You wouldn't have had to study for that much because you know it inside out.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and this is, I think it just, it goes back to sort of just, it's professional development is just easy for me,
You love it.
Spend so much time reading, and I think it's probably the thing, one thing I have to check myself is not go down a rabbit hole, and, you sort of, certainly if I'm writing PDPs for somebody, then I'll start writing a PDP and be like, oh, that's quite interesting. An hour later, be like, I've not done anything on this PDP, so I've just been reading about this new tech.
And you had mentors or coaches along the way?
Yeah, so I've really fortunate to have, in the early days, I knew in terms of when you invest in the business, but then and then Richard, as a informal coach, is always good for an idea and piece of advice. But in a more formal way, recently, I think from 2012, maybe before, maybe a decade, I've had a chap called Buddy Simoni, who used to be, he was UK managing director for 3Com, I think, and then Siemens,
right,
and then he does. Advises companies on investment into high-tech firms at the moment. So he's been really good over the years, and a good ear to bend.
Yep, great. And do you have a board of directors or advisors?
Yeah, so we do board meetings. I'm actually only strategy director, but Andy Urie, who is a good mate and accountant, sits informally as our finance director. Then we have a company secretary, and Buddy Simoni is the chair of the board. So we do those 4 times a year, and they're really good in terms of giving you a nudge back on track if you're losing focus throughout the quarter, and it makes you, it brings you back to what the most important things are, and just sort of preparing them, getting for them. Sometimes we just meet up and have dinner and sort of check off what we've got to check off, but then you have a discussion with some great people around the table, which gives you new business ideas and new directions. So they're really good.
All right, mate, we're on our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
Yeah. That is a tough question. I mean, in terms of the actual business, I'd say generally is customer acquisition. I mean, that's the one that everyone generally struggles with. The other one that I see a lot is finding the right business partner. And certainly if you're a technical business and you're not technical, you've just got an idea, then finding the right technical talent is the most difficult. Definitely for us at the moment. It's still, you know, getting the right size to have the right person is always a problem. You know, you're always like, if we get to this, we need this role. We need this role in the business. This is a problem in the business, but you're not big enough for that to have that as a full-time person. And so you're always trying to move people around. And then you also got the other competing thing of people want to grow and develop. And so they're like, I want to try and do this area of the business, but you haven't really got a problem there. You've got a problem here. And so certainly in my business, the service industry, where it's all about people, it's moving people into the right seats on the bus and finding those seats, and also filling a seat that really needs to be filled. And sometimes you sort of push someone into a seat and they're no good at it. And then that I'd say for Lucidica, for a service business, is probably the hardest, is juggling. And I don't know what size you get to when that doesn't become so much of a problem anymore. It becomes easier now. And it becomes easier as you grow, but it's still, you know, I've got a key member of staff going on maternity leave, and it's a few months off yet. But then, you know, there's an opportunity there to move people around. But then when that person comes back, what do you do, and how do you've got to sort of see what the business is going to look like when they go on maternity leave, and then when they come back, and anticipate it and shift people around.
Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
Built to Last, really love.
Yep.
Right. Probably that. The one I recommend more than anything else is E-Myth Revisited.
Yeah.
Certainly to fledgling businesses. Everyone I've ever recommended that book to always says that book's brilliant, but I only really got it once I'd been through the lessons.
Yeah, me too. Someone gave that to me 5 years in. I wish I'd have read it closer to the start, but yeah, it's my favorite book.
Yeah.
Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
Manager tools. Really love manager tools. Yeah. Yeah.
One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
Tool.
Don't say SharePoint.
Well, I was going to say SharePoint. SharePoint is amazing.
No, it is
It
awesome.
amazing.
When you showed that to me the first time, I've gone, whoa, this thing is so flexible and powerful. It was amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you don't know SharePoint, Microsoft mainly push it as a software storage, a file storage system these days, but it can power your business. So everything from CRMs to ERPs. I mean, think of it sort of like an online version of Excel. It's really powerful, and if you've got any Office 365 subscription, it's free.
Oh.
So yeah, definitely great. Oh, and probably an online accountancy package. When we moved to Xero, that was a big change.
You fought me on that though. You loved your we had Mile, didn't we?
No, we had Say. Did we? No, you moved us to Mile.
Oh,
you
sorry.
moved us to Mile. Yeah,
that's Australian software. That's right. It was Sage to Mile and then Xero. My God, yeah.
Yeah, God.
Finally, my favorite question: what would you tell yourself on day one of starting out?
To give it a go. Don't be afraid. I think the biggest problem is, people are just, you've just got to try. You've just got to push yourself, try. If you get it wrong, it's not the end of the world. Pivot lots, pivot, try again, you'll make mistakes, get yourself up, dust yourself down, and push yourself. It's the only way. You can only really succeed through being a genius, luck, or hard work. And most of us aren't geniuses. And if you're building a business on luck, then good luck to you.
That's right. Well, mate, thanks so much for your time today. I've had 26 business partners so far, and I think I said to you last time I was in London almost 2 years ago now that you're my top 2 favourite business partners, the best that I've had. So thank you. I really appreciate it. The only two things you and I really clashed about were the name of the company. Early on, I got there and I thought, no, this doesn't make sense. People can't spell it. It's not a real word. We thought about that. And then I said, right, give me 6 months. I'll come up with another name. And we just got too busy. I didn't get back to it and the name stuck.
Well, you are right. I mean, it's a terrible name. I mean, the only thing that's good about it is
the .com.
Well, the .com, people don't get you confused with anything else. But it's difficult to, well, it's not difficult to say, it's difficult to pronounce if you don't know how to pronounce it. It's difficult to spell. The amount of checks we used to pay in back in the day with the company name written wrong is amazing.
Yeah. We still bank them though, they're still accepted. And the only other thing which we had to warn the team about every 2 years that you and I used to clash about was, of course, the Ashes.
Yeah. I can't remember how many times did you guys win it over here?
Oh, no, you're just goading me. You're setting me up here. I still remember that pub in, was it the first or second test? That it was
the first test, it was Cardiff, mate. It was Cardiff.
Yeah, and I said, that's it.
The famous Monty Panesar, James Anderson, last wicket stand. And what did you say? Because England had collapsed and there was no way they could win.
Yep.
And you said,
that's it.
Don't worry, mate. Give it 10 years. They might be okay again, England.
And you end up thumping us for the whole series. Yeah.
Oh, and I just remember we were at a barbecue at a mate's and England couldn't win. And on the final day, like the wickets started falling and Collingwood stayed at the crease for ages. And you were sort of jubilant. It's just like, just a matter of time now. And as there's sort of hours in the afternoon waned on, you got your happiness waned as the hours did. It was incredible that test.
It was. Yeah. Well, thank you, mate. Really appreciate the time and great to be
Pleasure. Thanks, mate.
And yeah, well done on the growth over the last 22 years now. It's phenomenal.
Indeed. Yeah.
I'll see you hopefully in Australia if you can get out for the Ashes sometime soon. If not, it probably won't be this year. We'll have a G&T in the sun and a beer somewhere.
Yeah, nice.
That's it. Thanks for listening. Please leave a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. It means more small business owners will find our cast and help people with their business growth journey.